To and welcome everyone to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson, and normally with us is Steve Lacy. He is actually on vacation. He's in San Diego, which is where I'm going next week. So he kind of copied me on that, but he's gone. Michael Gray sometimes is with us. Mike is out today, but I do have a special guest. Bobby Williams is our guest, and I'm going to introduce Bobby in a moment or so. If you're new to our podcast, we've been doing this for many, many moons, even before it was fashionable to do podcasts. We were doing video stuff probably 10, 12 years ago or more, and we like doing this. We're a company that works with churches and ministries exclusively. We primarily do streaming video, but we do all sorts of different topics on podcasts, not just streaming and technical things. All of us with streamingchurch.tv and our company here, all of us have a background in ministry. And so we are very much, we have a real desire to help people who are volunteering, who are leaders. And so a lot of our podcasts focus on that as well as the technical things. So that's where I'll bring Bobby Williams in. Bobby is a man of many talents. He is the lead pastor of a multi-site church, which we'll get into in a little bit, in East Tennessee, beautiful part of the country there. He also is the community and coaching director of Church Fuel, which we'll talk about. Also the executive content director of Ignite Church Network. And as you can tell here, he does a lot of jobs. We'll try to figure out exactly how he does all that. I don't know how he does, but he really wants to help people follow Jesus. And he's been married for 15 years, got a couple of great kids. Bobby, thanks for being with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast.
Yeah, hey Phil, it's great to be here. Really excited to talk to you guys, and hopefully one day be able to have such an amazing background in my videos as well, such as you, because I just want to be where you are, man.
Well, actually, this background is actually Mission Beach, San Diego. We're in Tucson, Arizona, but I have this thing lately for Mission Beach. We go there quite a bit, my family, and so I stuck it back there. Since I could do it, I did it. So that's what's on the background here. So if in case people are watching, we are wondering, this is obviously audio as well as video, and we got Bobby here on video. So Bobby, thanks again for being with us today. I'll spend a few minutes. You've been a lead pastor here of, what's the name of your church?
Yeah, our church is called The Ridge Church, and we're located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. One of our locations is there, another location in Clinton, Tennessee, right outside of the Knoxville area.
All right, good. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today was you're also working with Church Fuel, and I want to talk a little bit about how you, well, I'll let you explain what Church Fuel here is. Churchfuel.com. That's the domain, right? Churchfuel.com. I want to really talk a little bit about how you guys are working with churches in the pandemic. But first, talk about Church Fuel. What do you guys do? What is Church Fuel?
Yeah, I love talking about Church Fuel. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do. So Church Fuel is a resource company. We offer resources for churches as well as coaching also for churches. And we make insanely practical resources to help churches get where they want to go and be who they want to be. And so we've been at that for, 5 or 6 years now, I think, with Church Fuel. And man, it's been great. The pandemic obviously has created a lot of work for us right now. But man, we love helping churches. So we're excited to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I remember interviewing Michael a few years ago, maybe when you guys were relatively new at it. So it's exciting to see how you guys are doing. So look, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. It seems like every podcast we do here at Church Solutions, we're talking about COVID-19. But I think we do need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. And I'm sure you guys are, you're working with churches, you're coaching churches. What have been some of the challenges that you're getting from people now, from pastors? I mean, this pandemic, it's horrific. Some churches are meeting now, some are meeting and doing online, some are not meeting at all. What kind of a challenge has this been for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. The challenges it's kind of like a moving target right now. The challenges are constantly changing. when the pandemic first hit, many of the challenges that we were facing because of the churches that we work with a lot of churches that are normal sized churches, less than 100 or 200.
Sure.
Which some people might say, well, that's a small church, and we say, no, that's actually a normal sized church.
Yeah.
And so most of the churches that we work with, are in that normal sized range. And so a lot of them, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, were just figuring out, how do we get online? Like, how do we stream our services, and what are the best practices for doing that? So there were a lot of challenges around that. And then, of course, as the pandemic has shifted, and in some states churches can gather, some they can't. So there's still, some are still doing online only, some are trying to juggle both. Now a lot of the challenge is going from, okay, how do we keep people engaged? How do we, it was one of those challenges, especially was like, hey, we hit Easter and now nobody wants to gather online anymore, right? So it was like, how do we keep people engaged? How do we do discipleship in a digital format? How do we continue to be able to fund the mission and the ministry through the challenges that everyone is facing in America, around finances right now? So we're really just trying to help churches navigate all of those places wherever they are, because they're all in different spots right now. And so for us, it's just been a constant moving target.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm amazed. We work with churches, and of course, when the pandemic hit us in March and April, it was just amazing. We were just, frankly overwhelmed for a week or two, and then we got on our feet here because providing streaming video. We actually are running. We're still, getting people wanting to stream that have never streamed before, and we're actually running across some churches that don't even have websites, which I'm just amazed. I mean, It's 2020. You don't have a website, and some of these churches are using Facebook, to reach people, but it's just unbelievable to me that you don't have a website. But we understand that. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about this stuff. So the pandemic hits. Walk me through, if you could, because you're lead pastor of a multi-site deal, so you probably were already doing something with streaming. But when this thing hit you guys, walk me through even just the first couple of weeks or so. What was going through your mind, through your leadership team's mind, and how were you processing this thing?
Yeah.
Because some people, I'll let you answer that, but some people are like, oh, this is going to pass. It'll be gone in a month, or it's not really a big deal. Or some were like, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. So, walk me through that.
Yeah, I think we certainly experienced a lot of that too, thinking, well, we'll be out for 2, maybe 3 weeks before we can regather again together. And then kind of about halfway through that process, we realized that it was going to be a lot longer. We might be looking at 10, 12, who knows, how long before we can actually begin to regather. But for us, just personally speaking, from our church's perspective, we began to really think through, okay, what does it look like? Because we've had this conversation in our churches before, and we have this conversation a lot within Church Fuel as well with the churches that we help, is what does it look like when your most prized, most powerful piece on the chessboard is removed? Your queen, right? It goes back to a Alan Hirsch reference from one of his books, where he talks about how churches, the Sunday gathering is really like the queen on the chessboard, right? And so how do you play the game of chess without your most powerful piece? Because the best chess players in the world, they strategize their strategy around looking at, hey, how can I win this match without utilizing my queen? And then when you reinsert the queen, it's like checkmate, right? So we started to really get down to looking at, okay, what does this really look like? We've talked about it a lot before, but now we really get to practice what that looks like. And so it really began to be discussions of how do we go from a centralized type of church to a decentralized type of mini or micro churches, around our community. And so we had a lot of discussions around that, realizing that we were going to be in this place for quite a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and I apologize, by the way, for the hum in the background. It's going to be probably 107 degrees today in Tucson, so my air conditioning's running right now.
Hey.
So sorry for the buzz. So all right, so you're looking through all this stuff. You're going through all these things are going through your mind. When you're working with pastors, your team, but then other pastors with your other gig here with Church Fuel. What's your advice to them as far as, several things you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, helping people stay engaged? One of the things, I also work with a church part-time, and one of the things I've seen since we've gone exclusively online, and we're not meeting, by the way, where we're at. We have a small facility. We feel like it's just not a good environment for people. It's not a good experience. Our church is about 100 people, but our facility is really small. So when we have 100 people, we're pretty crowded. So it's really hard for us to do social distancing and all those things. And it's just hard because the facility's small. So there's different options out there. Well, do you let 20 or 30 people in, and then do you do multiple services? But, and by the way, are you guys meeting? Is your church Oak Ridge meeting? Are you guys... You are getting...
Yeah, we've been meeting since about the very end of May.
Okay, so you've been going. So you didn't have... So like in Arizona, we had flare-ups. We shut down for a while here in Arizona, and then it spiked. So then we shut back down again, and now it's starting to go back down. So you guys may not... You're in Tennessee, so maybe you didn't have quite what we experienced. So you're meeting... I'm getting off track here a little bit, but let me ask you, what have you changed, or if anything, since you are meeting again? What has changed? Are you doing any social distancing? Are you asking people to wear masks? Are you spraying Lysol all over the place? What's going on? What's changed or what hasn't changed?
Yeah, so a lot has changed, honestly. Especially in our gatherings. We're a church that we would do communion every week together as a church. We had to put that on pause. That was one of the first things. Logistically speaking, we had to change seating arrangements to allow for social distancing. We are, because of where we are, and we've been very cognizant to, make sure that we, check the data and are constantly watching those things. But we've not had major types of flare-ups like I know that you guys have had in Arizona and some other parts of the country. So we've been able to say, especially like for masks, is we've been able to say, hey, we encourage it, but it's not required. There's not a mask mandate in Tennessee or in our city. So we've been able to say, hey, we encourage it, but it's not required. And, it's about 50-50, which is okay, within our congregations. And then we've done some other things. We've shortened our service a little bit so people aren't, together in the room for as long. But the biggest things that we have done has been really re-strategizing around what we're doing digitally. We were doing streaming and, all that stuff before the pandemic. And so that wasn't much of a shift for us there. But, shifting a lot of our groups, to online, as well as moving some of, how we connect with our community through a more of an online type of way versus an in-person type of way. And then really trying to just balance those things out and even move the ball down the field a little bit on that and say, hey, what does this look like for us long term? Because, and you've probably had this conversation with lots of churches, when we began to regather, we knew that we were not going to be, where we were back in March when we stopped gathering physically. There were going to be a lot of people that just were not going to come back, for various reasons. And that's been the case, at Church Fuel. A lot of the churches we work with have seen anywhere from only 30 to 20% of their congregation come back at this point.
Wow. 20 to 30%. Okay. I've heard 40 or 50, but 20% or 30. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, very very interesting, and we expect that number to kind of begin to slowly rise a little bit. For us personally, we've been very lucky. We've seen about 60% of our congregation come back,
Okay.
and so we're very fortunate for that. But one of the things that we have to understand and realize is that even when things get to be the best that they can be, we've probably lost 20% of our congregation that will never come back, right? They're just not coming back.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so now it's not just saying, okay, well, what can we do in the meantime to sort of bridge that gap? Now it's saying, what can we do long term? Like, how do we re-strategize everything that we are doing in order to continue to reach those people?
All right. So, what are your thoughts about long term? I mean, I can tell you what my church is doing, but I'm interviewing you. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing the same thing, and we're thinking this is a long term thing. I mean, COVID-19 has changed, in my opinion, changed the way we do church, and in some ways, that may not be such a bad thing.
Right.
But let me get your take on that. What are you guys doing? Are you going to be doing online workshops? Are you doing classes? Just tell us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's great. We have changed quite a few things as far as our strategy for some things. One of the big things, a project that we were actually working on before COVID, but now we've sort of kicked into high gear, is taking our partnership, we call it membership partnership here, and so taking that process completely online. And instead of doing, like a lot of churches will do a growth track, right? Like 101, 201, that kind of thing.
Right. Right.
We don't have that. We basically kind of took the model that we have in Church Fuel for making short master classes and putting them on demand online and making that our partnership process where we have it's going to be, when all said and done, it'll be about 24 videos that are less than 10 minutes in length. And someone that wants to be involved in our church, or they want to become a partner in our church, that kind of thing, they'll do this on demand, and it'll kind of be like an open enrollment membership type deal, like an insurance world, right? Where there's a couple of times a year where you can go through the process and have an amount of time to go through that process. And so we've really kicked that into high gear, and we're putting all of that online for people to come and be a part of. And then at the end of that process, we'll have one big, not big, but it'll be 4 times a year, so it'll be smaller, gathering where they'll ask questions, and we'll have a celebration, and all of those kinds of things. But 95% of what they do in that process will be online and on demand at their own time and own speed. We've changed our online groups to we've done some different things around that through the way that we do them, even to a lot of like small groups will meet. They'll be like 6:30 in the afternoon or in the evening, and you've got to worry about childcare and food
Right.
and where you're going to meet and all those things. Well, when you do them on Zoom, you can do them at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night.
That's
Kids are in
right.
bed. You can eat whatever you want to eat. You can show up in your
Yeah.
pajamas. The only thing the only thing that we're competing with at that point is Netflix, which is a pretty big deal. But we've had a lot of success in doing it that way, during this time. And so those are just some of the small shifts that we've been making.
Yeah. Well, they add up, and there's certainly shifts that I think can make a difference in people's lives. So, how's the finances, and not just your finances, but working with Church Fuel, you're talking to a lot of different churches and pastors. Have the finances been a problem for some of these clients that you have?
Honestly, Phil, the majority of what we're hearing is that finances are actually going really well
Yeah.
across the
Okay.
board. And now there are some exceptions where they've not gone well at all. But I think especially the churches that had a digital online giving focus before the pandemic,
Mhm.
honestly did not miss much of a beat. What we have found is the churches that did not have an online strategy, especially in generosity and giving, those are the ones that really struggled the most during
Right.
this time, and are going to continue to struggle going forward. So we've seen great success in that. The downside to that, I think, is that the longer we experience the effects, even as cases and numbers and all that stuff begin to come down, the longer that we continue to see effects in different parts of the country from COVID, the more of an opportunity it will have to actually affect the finances of churches, because it's affecting those who attend the churches, therefore those who are generous in the churches. And I think long term is where we're really going to start to see, some of that effect take place
as the economy takes a hit over this stuff. Yeah. So I guess you would say, at least this is what I would say, and maybe you would agree with me, that if you can get people connected and if they're involved, even if it's only online, there's a better chance that they're going to support what they believe in. They're going to support the ministry. They're going to support the church. I mean, if they're not really connecting, if there's no kind of somebody said this the other day and I can't think of it. It's not just, it's more about interaction now than it is just numbers.
That's right.
I mean, it should have always been interaction, but I think especially now that many are just limited to online or at least a hybrid of that, to me, the interaction is the key. Well, it's the key to everything. It's the key for people's spiritual growth. It's a key for the church's growth financially, as well as getting people involved and connecting. Interaction, I think, is an important part. And so as we head into, look, I think this is my take. I don't think things are going to change a whole lot in 2021. I think the pandemic's going to be around. Pandemic's going to be around for a while. The vaccine, if we're fortunate enough to get a vaccine quickly, there's a large percentage. I read something the other day. There's like 30 to 35% of Americans don't want to take a vaccine. Mm-hmm. So that you have some of that going on. And then there's always a chance that this vaccine, it's not 100%. I mean, usually no vaccine is. In fact, my understanding is that the way a vaccine will get approved is if at least takes care of 50%. Right. So there's, and we know from flu shots, flu shots aren't always that effective, So my take, and do you agree with me or not, that we're going to be in this thing for the long haul, at least for a while, because it's just not disappearing. And that's my take. The pandemic is not just going to magically disappear. You're still going to have remnants of it around, and it's going to affect how people attend church or don't attend church.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. In fact, I think I was coaching with a church through this the other day, and this is not to be to be doomsday by any stretch of the imagination. Like you said earlier, I actually think that there's a silver lining to this whole thing that's really good for the church. But the fact of the matter is you're seeing this in our culture and in things like retail and restaurants and different things like that, where in some states you can only have 25% occupancy in restaurants, and so restaurant owners are they're getting upset because they're like, well, you're killing our business because you're only allowing me to serve 25% of what I can hold capacity wise. Well, it doesn't mean that you can't serve them through pickup or curbside or different things like that. The problem is that the effects of COVID on our economy and our culture, and here's the biggest one, our mindset, has permanently damaged what happens moving forward. Meaning that, yes, I 100% believe that 20% of our churches aren't coming back because they're going, you ain't sticking me in a room full of people, and whether they get the vaccine or COVID to them will always be around, right? And so it's just changed our mindset. It's changed the way that we're going to interact with people, and it's changed a lot of different things. And so moving forward, I do think that as a church is we just have to come to a realization of that and say, you know what? Hey, it is what it is. But the good news is, and this is where, I find that silver lining, and I say, okay, let's look at what we have left. Like now we have left, we've kind of sort of separated some of the chaff from the wheat, right? There's this pruning process that I believe that Jesus has done in the life of the church. And you may not see as many for a time those cultural Christians, a part of our church. Nothing wrong with, we should reach those. I'm not saying that there's, that's bad. What I am saying, I think you understand what I'm saying, is that we're getting down to like what matters most now, right? Where churches are going, you know what? Attendance doesn't matter as much as it used to. Attendance may not matter at all because we can't attend anything, right? So what does matter? Well, discipleship matters, engagement matters, multiplication of disciples matters, all of those types of things, being actively engaged and involved in what it means to follow Jesus. Like those are the things that really matter. And I think that is a good thing for us when it comes to the church.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we're running out of time, but let me ask you this: if there's pastors out there listening to this, and we have pastors and volunteers and lots of different people listening to this podcast, 7 or 8 of them at least. I'm being funny, but maybe not. But churchfuel.com. How can people get a hold of you guys? What can you offer them? I mean, I know it's coaching, but give me a minute or so of tell us what Church Fuel can offer me if I was a senior pastor looking for some help.
Yeah, so Church Fuel, we have lots and lots and lots of resources. So when you become a member of Church Fuel, which is incredibly affordable, but when you become a member of Church Fuel, you do get coaching. So we have 5 or 6 coaches, including myself, that you can set up a scheduled coaching time to just bounce ideas and brainstorm things off of, get advice, or just somebody to pray with you and pray for you. So that's part of it. But you also get courses and master classes, things on like, how to reset your vision, or reimagine your core values of your church, put a path forward for your church, or even resources, done for you resources that I think now numbers in the hundreds of resources in our resource library that you can just take, customize yourself. And here's one of my favorite things is if we don't have the resource that you're looking for, you let us know and we build it for you. And that's part of your membership at Church Fuel. And then the other thing is just community. Like, I think that's the biggest thing is so we have a large community of pastors from all across the world that are encouraging, that love to pray with one another, pray for one another, offer ideas and advice and different things like that. But, Church Fuel is just we say people come for the resources, but they stay for the community. And that's what we've seen over the years. And it's one of my favorite things. But the easiest way, like if anybody has any questions about Church Fuel, you can always email me. It's pretty simple. Bobby, BOBBY, at churchfuel.com. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody about it.
That's awesome. That's great. All right. Well, we're out of time. Bobby Williams, senior leader of It's the Ridge. Is that what's the name of the church?
That's right. Okay. The Ridge Church. Yep.
All right. And then also with churchfuel.com. And you just heard that's how you can reach Bobby if you have any questions for him, or if you have questions for us, or you just want to pass something on to him, you can always reach us, support@streamingchurch.tv. Well, Bobby, again, thank you so much for your time. It's really good to get your perspective on this.
Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate it, man.
All right. Well, God bless you and what you guys are doing there. So my name is Phil Thompson, and on behalf of Steve Lacy, Michael Gray, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care of yourselves. We will catch you again next time.